Hello, I'm Leela Witherspoon, and this is my Material and the Mind project experiment. I started off pretty straightforward and kind of going to like my most straight, like basic visual tools that I use, and the initial thing that grabbed me was like paper, and I actually liked this. It's basic, but I would really like to see this almost on a layers, like enough layers of paper where it feels topographical, where it becomes so dimensional. That would be kind of fun, and I would be interesting to kind of take it to that level. But from the last one to this one, I wanted more great, like that smooth blending and like a transition of tones is and values is kind of important to my artwork, and so this was me adding pastel to the ripped paper, and I feel like it glows a lot more than the last one, and so in that sense I thought it was kind of successful. And from there I was trying to figure out what else to do with paper, and so I was adding, so I was like, okay, let's subtract. And I think it was because I had worked with a student with a light box earlier in the day or something like that, but my brain kind of clicked, and I was like, let's play with light. And light, if you remember my initial presentation about the direction I'd like to take my work, light is a big thing. And so this was a big aha moment for me as this came together, and I flipped on the light box and I turned off my lights and it glowed. I really connected with this in that moment. And there was a lot of aha in this moment. And I spent a lot of time thinking about, like, okay, could I make shadow boxes? Like, what would I make those out of? And then I just happened, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll come back to this thought. So around the same time I was working on, like, okay, my first three-dimensional one. And I thought, like, if I make a bust out of tinfoil, I can cover it with, I was like, do I cover it with paper, which is what I've been messing with, or I'm trying to kind of recreate this unraveling of self, and I've got some sketches that really align with this idea. And so this is kind of how that came to play. I don't really think this was successful, but I think it's unsuccessful because of the scale of it. I think it could be more interesting if it, was the whole thing and it was a lot bigger. And then I did it. I didn't learn my lesson, and I did it again. And I didn't really realize that I wasn't learning my lesson. I was just like, okay, I would love to try this with clay. And I flattened some of my coils in hopes that it would give kind of more of that sense of a rippling texture. And then I overdid the drapey bits, and it just kind of gets lost. And it's almost the exact same size as the last one. And I was staring at this one and I was like, it's really, again, I screwed up. It's the scale. I think it would be a lot better, larger. But I don't know. These were not my favorites. From there, looseness is not a natural thing for me. I am quite tight when it comes to my painting practice. So I was like, well, how do I play with being loose with these ideas? And so for this became like a squeegee thing. And I would like this if I could figure out a better way to kind of have it trail out. How it looked on the paper, I really couldn't have. What I could, I could make it, I think it could be something, as long as if I figured out how to make it kind of expand into the black a little bit in a way that was subtle and beautiful. But as is, I'm like, meh. But this I had a lot of fun with. I'm really proud of this one. I spent like about 3 hours painting myself one evening. The big problem I have with it is that I started it in the evening, so I had a very limited time frame, and then by the time I'm taking photos, it's hours into darkness. And so I'm just dealing with kind of artificial lights in my house. And so I would love to start this like 8 a.m. on a Saturday, have all day, have my professional light set up, have a tripod with my nice camera, and like really see what I could do with this. But I think as like a kind of initial plan of something like that, I actually really like it. And I'm pretty happy with how this one manifested, but definitely in the material exploration part of this, my physical self, I'm just holding my arm up and like doing this over and over and over again for hours and hours and hours. And like the way I was kind of positioning myself so I could see in my poorly lit house, it was rough on the body. So I was the material that lacked in this one. That was definitely the place I kind of came up against a wall. And I just wanted to share for funsies, I started playing with makeup remover and tried to make it interesting. But so again, the 3-dimensional one, as I'm dealing with it and I'm realizing that the scale of it's what's wrong, how do I pull back? How do I represent things in 3D but come backwards and like have the scale be better? And so I sculpted a woman out of baked clay, and I could have spent forever on it, but I was about an hour and I just kind of went for it. And like there's no toes or fingers, but I just was like, I gotta take a stab at this. And then I did this hanging system, which, I mean, it's a little fetishy, but it wasn't my intention. It's meant to kind of seem something like my paintings. And back when I first posted to Facebook my falling painting, one of my old professors from my bachelor's had commented that she could see it in like fiber hanging in air. And so I've kept that in my mind, and I think that's part of what this was trying to kind of in mini replicate that idea of, I don't know. And it's not bad. I could do more here. I could do more here. With like more time on the sculpture, and then like more like trying to create invisible elements, and like really spending more than like 2 hours trying to tear through this, you know. I could see this being something I've developed. But I took that same woman and I did not bake her before hanging her in the last scenario, but with this one I was like, okay, what's going to be her final form? And I started playing with her, and I could kind of feel her head bowing, and I wrapped her hands around her chest, and I was like, okay, this is really the position I'm feeling right now. One thing I want to do this quarter is definitely, I'm grieving at the moment, and I want to take some time to kind of explore that. And so that was kind of what came out of this one. And then I was like playing with the yarn, and it created like a surface tension and like a ground for what she's sitting on. So I kind of like that. I wish I had better yarn in this moment, but it's what I had on hand. And so I, especially like this one on the right here, I could almost see that one being a painting, if I fully kind of realized it. And so I could see taking this further. This one was just having my Andy Goldsworthy moment, and again, the interrupted pattern is something I'm really playing with a lot and trying to deal with, and so I've got that. I wish I'd done more of it. That's kind of where I feel like I failed on that one. So this ties back into slide 3, the idea I had with the light box. And that same day that I did the one with the light box, I was like, I went to a thrift store just trying to see if there was something I could spark. And even there, I didn't notice it, even though I walked by an old lamp and I like trailed my fingers through the fringe. And it wasn't until, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes later that my brain went zing. And I was like, it would be so cool to do like that layered buildup of things and play with transparency and light in a lamp form. Because I'd been racking my brain about how to build a light box. I was like, well, a lamp, it's pretty straightforward. In regards to like how to manifest it, it'd just be like, what could I do with it? And so this is not a great example of what I could do with it. But there's so much here that I would like to mine of using literal light within my work. And so I guess I ask you, should I continue this idea of the lampshade? I could totally, I know a website. I've always wanted to do vintage antique lampshades where like they're beautiful forms and they have all those things. Like, should I attempt something with it? I kind of want to, even if I don't do it in class. So I'm really intrigued at what I could do with something along the lines of like a lampshade and light. And just playing with that, I was in my studio, I looked up, And there was the glass dome version of it, a lot more opaque. And so I fought it a little bit more, and there's a lot of white papers in there that did not kind of read. So I had to kind of pivot and grab it out. And I made bits that were out of black. And I like how this manifested. I think this would be also a fun thing to kind of play with. And I just took that silhouette from the lamp and the lamps, the both lamps, and I used her to kind of create this halo, but the pastel was really fighting me, and I really feel at the end of the day she looks like a chalk outline of a crime scene. So this one didn't speak to me as much once I was done. And then finally, I was inspired by a peer looking at their projects. Somebody had repeated, I should have looked up their name before now. Somebody had repeated a block in a couple different ways, and I was like, oh, I don't know, my brain went, a tessellation. I was like, that would be kind of fun. Like, I haven't done anything like that in ages. I certainly have never done block prints in a tessellation kind of on purpose. And so with my circles, I was Googling like tessellation circles and trying to figure out what would work, and came across this pattern, and I really liked it. But here I was like, could I do more? Could it be more? Could it be more modular? Could I play with it further? And so I did. And this is my t-shirt that I made I made 4 different blocks. And so it's a hodgepodge of different things, and it has some unity, but it also has some variety. And I could picture this on like a large scale where I'm almost like carving as I go and just printing and like creating, and I'm playing with tone, and there's just that I can visualize this on a much larger scale with just different blocks, and maybe it evolves from one side to the next as I continue to carve more block. I don't know. But I did enjoy this, and I could see doing more with this. Anyway, I've talked long enough. Thank you so much. I had fun.